Hello, we are live.
And in person.
Coming from our DM's home.
We're a hot mess express, so that's okay. We're always a hot mess express.
I blame the heat. This one?
Yes, but scroll down to chapter 1.
Fantastic.
Chapter 1. Tide of Light and Shadows.
Say, Lisa, you are pretty much out of frame.
Oh.
Just saying.
She's prettier than me. Hi, Pika! Hello. We're going to read the book, but we're going to miss your husband's wonderful narrations.
Yes, he's been recast.
Who's reading now? That's a good question. Should our love reading them? Yes. Yes.
After Silence and Lily, if you would like to watch Toy Story, I'm putting it on now.
Toy Story Kochi live from the other room. In case you wanted to do that. Because says I'm very bummed I'm not there to endlessly giggle.
Close the door.
We'll see how this works. Right now it's just like us and Pika.
Alright, then I'm going to keep eating.
Yeah, go ahead. Eat your
Burger
food.
and I are.
I already shoved one down.
You're two halves.
I will definitely be snacking after this.
The grilled squash
Listen,
turned out really well.
the main thing is that Twitch needs to think that we have gone live 7 times within 30 days.
This is true.
It doesn't need to know that there's only like 2 people watching.
And we have enough people
It
on
counts.
our weekly stream that it's not going to hurt our average number
There you
either.
go.
Because
It's
our average is
fine.
like 9 to 10. So even if we have no one watching this,
We
it
did.
won't drop us
the
below 3,
side
which is all we need.
Hey, look, now there's 3 people. So
Wow, we did it. We did it just like that. Thank you, everyone.
that's all Twitch needs to know.
Also, for those of you who weren't with us this past Monday, we now have a Ko-Fi. The link is on the bottom of your screen. If anyone subscribes during this chat, your name will show up
And
as our first subscriber. And as Amelia has alluded to, our first Ko-Fi subscriber gets to pick the song
There.
that we have people who will dance
Well,
to
thanks it.
on TikTok
Maybe
and
we'll
Instagram.
have Lisa send you something small and cute.
Yeah,
I mean, good try.
Ko-Fi subscribers, they could randomly get presents from our armorist.
There's, I think, a dog walked out of the room. Hi, man.
Welcome to the party, doggy. For those of you who are here for D&D content, how about some dogs instead?
Dogs. We got some dogs.
They're cute dogs.
Very cute. But hey, we will start in a minute. See if anybody else wants to join us. Putting out the feelers, tell people, you know, that we're here. We're gonna start breathing soon, and then it'll be great.
And if people like this, we'll come up with higher tech ways of doing it.
Do
Or
it
something.
better, like turning so if you're not watching my screen while watching the screen. All good. I'm just watching our view right now.
Do you need something?
Maybe I'll do a quick little TikTok live and tell people to come over.
Tell
we
people
wanna
to
be-
join the fun.
Yeah, we want to make sure that everyone gets to hear because we ain't starting over. Y'all are welcome. We were testing.
Don't worry, there were no technical difficulties. I intentionally muted us.
I know we're taking a little bit, but real life happens, you know.
Unfortunately,
That's just
children get in the way
real
of
life
these kinds of
happens.
content things. So
Children that I do not have. So if you are here, sound off in the comments. Let us know who you are lurking there. It says 3, but so far only Vika says she was there. So, and you said it doesn't count this, right?
correct. I will let you know how many people we've got. We've got. Oh,
Yeah.
this view does not show me how many.
Now 4 coming in. Welcome, welcome. We'll be reading the first 3 chapters of the
Will and
book.
Walt.
Hey!
Hey,
Welcome.
We got some cosplay content done today, and we probably overdid it ever so slightly because it was warm out. But
We're crazy.
yeah, we're excited to share some of the book with you all. We've been working really hard on it, so for those on Tickety Talk, come on over to twitch.rollsofredemption, and we will be reading our D&D campaign book. Thank you for your patience for those on Twitch. We just want to pull over a couple more people if possible, but we should be able to start in the next 5 minutes. So go grab a snack, grab a drink, go to the bathroom if you need to.
Sit down, relax, get comfortable.
Get comfy, get cozy.
While we try to control the chaos.
It's gonna be something. I don't know.
Oh, what it's
now
gonna
on twitch.tv/rolls of redemption. Kind of hard to see. So.
Luckily, I have few lines, so I'll be able to watch the
To
Twitch
get
and reply.
started, we only really need the DM to be our narrator, and I guess me.
Yep.
To be Mina.
Most of chapter 1 is you and the DM.
You can't really see the twitch.tv/rolls of redemption because there's a dark background, like right at the end, but there.
Yeah, but you guys know where it is because you're here.
All right, we've got.
It's just the people that see the recording later might not see it all.
Oh.
That's fine.
Hey.
We are
Is this the edited version? Because it looks the same to me.
It is edited.
Silas is playing with the fall.
Go. She missed Dad going out behind her.
Yeah. It's a chaos world. William Wallop is at work, so not much of a chance for comfort, but he's here.
Welcome.
You know.
Are we actually live?
We are
with
live.
my I show up late, you know.
Oh, we are
I'm
just
just
coming in with
I'm
your
a diva. I gotta come in late. You
We've
know?
just been riffing.
chaos.
Well, riffing what we made.
Listen.
Sorry, y'all.
Sorry, Lila was headed towards the door, so.
Off we pop to try and do a thing and see what happens.
A thing we've never done before.
Yeah, and we have had no practice with this so
No,
far. So
it's
this
gonna
is,
be awesome.
This
Yeah, tell us in your thoughts. Like I can read them. All right, chapter 1. I guess I start right off the bat.
You're right off the bat.
Okay, careful with that crate, boys.
Mina hollered at a few more distracted sailors who were already making eyes at the tittering ladies on the dock who had come to see the ship make port.
Men, so predictable.
She shook her head with a smile. The docks were crowded with bystanders, excited to see a glimpse of some of the soldiers passing by. But this was a supply run. None of them were wearing decorated uniforms and waving benevolently. No. Instead, it was all sweat and work. But the girls of Saltmarsh didn't seem to mind. They still giggled and whispered behind handkerchiefs. Whenever they saw Mina, though, they gave her a slightly confused look, which she returned with a sweet grin, as she could manage. Yeah, as sweet as she could manage. Peace signs were no less busy than war times, and in her 7 years serving in the King's Navy, Mina had seen both. But peace meant seeing more of the world than just blood-red seas and adrenaline-soaked soldiers.
Pause! We have our first Ko-Fi subscription!
Oh my god!
We'll do that.
Thank you!
was time to explore towns and ports and breathe clean air. Even if Salt Marsh wasn't the most exciting of places, it was still a refreshing sight. Tall spires from a few towers stretched up to the clear blue sky, the bustle of industry as traders and merchants brought their ships into port filled the air with all manner of noises. The scent of spices and pastries drifted on the salty breeze. It wasn't majestic by any means, and Mina had seen some majestic cities in her day, but something about it felt like home. Peace missions also meant that her job description had changed. Along with the rest of the crew, rather than having an in town and patrolling in their regal uniforms with crisp white coats over tunics and armor, the whole crew cut a much more casual sight as they offloaded various crates of weapons and other precautionary materials for the town, as well as replenishing their own personal supplies and rations. Even with the cool breeze of autumn blowing in, sweat glistened on Mina's brow and streamed down her back under her leather armor. Most of the men favored the shirtless look for this kind of work, but in a sense of self-preservation, always made Mina keep her armor on. Just a precaution. She pushed her sweat-slicked red hair off of her forehead as she paused to take a breath. The Eros talisman hadn't made a port in almost 6 months, and the work stretched on through the morning and into the early evening. She hadn't even had a chance to step off the gangplank. With the sun dipping low and the last crate loaded, Captain Leonard called out, "All right, lads." His eyes awkwardly connected with Mina's. She raised a pointed eyebrow in his direction, but forgave his slip with a half smirk. He nodded and continued, "Excellent work today. We have a week on dry land before we make for the next port. You all have your shore allowances for board or pleasure or drink, whatever you decide to do. I expect honorable behavior from all of you. Remember, I may not be watching, but mighty Mina is." A chuckle broke out among the soldiers, and the nearest man gave her a little shove. Mina smiled. It was incredible that the same men who had disliked her very existence when she first stepped foot on the ship now treated her like a sister, surrounding her like a pack of occasionally overprotective brothers. These were her men, and she would be honored to go into battle with any one of them. She might have to have broken a few noses to get to this point, but that was all in the past. But it was not battle the crew headed towards as they walked through the streets of Salt Marsh, rather towards a tavern known as the Wicker Goat for a drink, or two, or 12. A crew that drinks together stays together, after all, and Mina could drink some of these soldiers right under the table and still be on time for morning drills. The tavern was already bustling when Mina and her crew rolled in, cracking jokes and in good spirits. It seemed to be one of the more popular and better off places in town, mostly populated by large clusters of dwarven miners and a few smaller groups of fishermen. The whole place reeked of fish, and sweat, and fermentation, and overcooked meat, but it was a cheerful place, full of laughter and comrades taking a load off after a long day's work. There were a few tables open in the corner, so she wordlessly flagged 2 of her men in that direction while making her way to the bar.
Your best ale for me and my men.
Mina shook the bag of coins at the husky tavern keeper. Despite the relentlessly busy evening, the man seemed jovial. His merry eyes twinkled above ruddy cheeks as he finished pouring a drink for another customer, already nodding in Mina's direction. "Yes, of course. We're featuring a delightful autumn ale at the moment that I'm sure you and your crew would enjoy. I'll have the flagons delivered to your table." With a snap of his fingers, he passed the order on to a younger red-headed man who might have been his son. "Hop to it, Geoffrey." The tavern keeper's deft hand continued to fill and refill drinks as Geoffrey followed a little clumsily in his footsteps.
Much obliged.
The coins from her purse clanked to the countertop, and Mina turned to head back to her table. As she did, she caught a glimpse of someone out of the corner of her eye, a sort of dark and broody type sitting at the end of the bar. She looked at him just as his eyes slid away from her and surveyed the room with a keen observance of a hunter. The tall, black-haired elf had definitely been watching her.
Cute.
She smirked, accepting the ego boost. But whether he saw it or not, he didn't let on. 2 hours and 4 tankards later, a half-dwarf burst in. Not one of the miners, but an obvious minstrel, toting an enormous and elaborate set of bagpipes. He blustered in, rattling tables and spilling drinks, and creating disgruntled patrons as he made his way to the bar on a spectacularly gilded peg leg. Mina loved the sound of bagpipes. They made her think of exotic shores and green fields. The music was not only heard in the ear, but felt in the heart. So when the stumbling redhead was in earshot, she called out,
Hey, Piper, give us a song.
Aye, good, but I must first wet me whistle. Mina tossed a coin his way and shouted to the tavern keeper.
A drink for the good Piper.
A full glass of ale slid down the bar his way, and the piper guzzled it down greedily, wiping his foam-covered mustache with the back of his hand and finishing with a fantastic belch. All right, here we go. The bagpipes began humming to life, the vibration filling the room, and what came next could only be described as the sound of some sorrowful creature screeching into the night after its leg got caught in a trap. Not great.
Not great.
Definitely not what Mina had in mind. A collection of groans and complaints rose from the rest of her crew as the dwarven miners in the opposite side of the table started to throw scraps of their meal at him, booing most heartily.
A coin for you to stop that racket.
A woman's voice pierced through the general racket. Mina was grateful for the bailout from the raven-haired elf, cheeks heating with guilt for requesting the song and subjecting the tavern to whatever it was that followed after. All right, you ungrateful lot, the dwarven fellow growled out and hobbled to the bar. He emptied 4 or 5 cups that sat on the counter, the leftovers of abandoned drinks. Mina gagged slightly, picturing the amount of backwash the piper was probably consuming. He slammed the last tankard on the counter and made a beeline for a booth by the door, where he plopped himself down with great self-importance and started polishing his gold peg leg with the dregs of yet another abandoned drink. You'll regret your lack of appreciation when all the world sings the praise of the great Magnus the Piper. Nice going, lass. Dex slapped her on the back, and Mina sunk slightly into her chair. Dex was a Goliath, a hulking mass of a man, who stood at an intimidating 7 feet tall. In battle, he was terrifying. But on a daily basis, he was Mina's best friend, her right-hand man, and brother in arms. She had split his lip on her first day on the ship after he called her minuscule Mina, and they had been the best of friends ever since. He was still quick to tease her, but it was all in good fun these days.
What? At least it sounds better than your singing, you big oaf.
Dex replied with a hearty laugh and clinked his glass against hers. Story! 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 The dwarves in the corner started a slow chant, turning their focus to the apparent leader of their group, a dust-covered old dwarf with a sweeping gray beard. He stood and raised his hand for silence. Everyone stilled in anticipation. You all know the tale of the ghost of Saltmarsh. Some heads nodded, others rolled their eyes and returned to their drinks. But Mina leaned in to hear. She was a sucker for ghost stories. Well, the house up there on the hill. They say an old alchemist lived there, became obsessed with his work. He not only pursued gold making, he also sought after an elixir for eternal life. There was a flicker of movement in the mirror above the bar. Mina saw that the dark elf she had made eye contact with earlier was now listening intently and using the mirror to watch the dwarven storyteller.
Curious.
He hadn't looked up from nursing his drink for the past 2 hours, but something as simple as a ghost story was causing him to stir. Now we all know what happens when a man searches out eternal life, the storyteller continued. Scattered nods and murmurs of agreement. Consumed he became, obsessed with the idea of defeating death, but it got him in the end. Or did. This elicited a few groans from the skeptics and apparently a couple of laughs from all of these folks. Folks that pass the house say they hear muttering on the breeze and see shadows in the windows. Most stay away from that place, but others, well, they go seeking the treasure. They say the alchemist had a pile of treasure he used to make his potions, but no one has found it, and most don't linger there for long. They all come running back, sick with fright, so the treasure remains in that home, along with the The spirit of the alchemist. The hairs on the back of Mina's neck stood on end, which was odd because it wasn't a particularly good ghost story. The dwarf took his seat and the bar sprang back to life. She glanced back at the mirror only to see the elf's eyes connect with hers for a moment.
The GM has more backstory than anyone else does.
Sorry.
Cheater.
Spoilers.
I know.
A part of
He's
her.
not even an elf.
Extra spoilers.
A part of her wanted to smile at him, but his face had remained so neutral that she wondered if he would know how to smile. He looked away, rose from his seat, and slid down the bar to speak to the tavern keeper. If he was doing some fact-checking, Mina had to know more.
Get us another round.
She collected the empty glasses off the table with a chorus of approval from the men and made her way to the bar. She arrived just in time to hear the tavern owner indulge Mr. Dark and Stormy. I forgot the tavern owner's voice.
Already, within 5 minutes, you started.
I've gone through like 3 voices
I know.
already.
Do you want me to take over narration a little bit for you?
Peter needs to step in for
Well,
something.
I can't say if there's actually a ghost, but you won't catch me in my own near there. Young folks don't recall, but I do. Oddfellow, the alchemist, always seemed a bit unhinged. But good for cash. He turned his attention to Mina. Refill, lass? She threw a nod at the old man while angling her body towards Baruti.
So, you going ghost hunting?
I may.
He lifted his cup to his lips, not directly looking at her and seeming more interested in the contents of his drink than her.
Want some company? I have some time before we ship out.
Mina sipped her own data, half expecting him to wave her off immediately. His dark eyes slid in her direction, eyes so deep brown they were almost black, the irises in the pupils barely distinguishable. He raised a skeptical eyebrow, the first indication that his face wasn't a completely expressionless mask that Mina had seen so far.
You know anything about ghosts?
Those eyes were kind of soulless, but damn, that bone structure. Never encountered a ghost, but I've faced a few sirens. It's useful to be the only lady on a ship. Someone's got to keep all the men from the ship from jumping overboard.
She attempted a joke that clearly did not land.
Sirens and ghosts aren't the same.
He replied dryly.
Yeesh, no sense of humor then. Well, if you're headed in that direction, I'd love to learn the difference. Shall we meet back here tomorrow?
He held her in a stare, but Mina didn't back down. She wondered if he was expecting her to say anything else or to edge away. But the slightly perplexed creased to his brow. She could tell that he probably wasn't used to working with people, let alone talking with them. The pause stretched on between them.
Fine.
He finally said.
What time?
Sunrise.
She wasn't sure why she chose that time. It was just the first thing that came into her mind.
Sunrise it is.
He agreed with the same dryness. After another awkward silence where he stared at her as if trying to work her out, he seemed to remember some semblance of manners.
I'm Atreus.
He offered his name, but not a handshake.
Mina.
Collecting her pint from the counter with a wide smile, she headed back to her crew. They continued in lively conversation, but her mind was filled with ghosts, treasure, and broody gentlemen, unsure which enticed her more.
Like my addition.
I love you.
All right, fellows, at last, move out. Decks boomed about a half hour later. They filed out of the tavern, but Mina lingered. Atreus was still sitting alone at the bar.
See you at sunrise.
She called to him. He gave her a brief nod in return. Okay, little fairy, came a slurred voice from below. The red-headed piper was splayed out on the bench of the first booth by the door, drunk as a skunk and staring blankly at the ceiling.
Very. Well, he's gonna have a hell of a night.
She headed out the door and back to her ship for the night. I see you into chapter 1, and I'm going to take a drink.
Hey, we made it to chapter 2.
God bless.
Got
Robert.
9 of you here. Thanks for staying for our chaos.
How many?
9. This is a good
Wow.
time to tell you that if you are enjoying the story, you can join our Ko-Fi link right down here. And if you do sign up for the $20 gift, you get what we have so far up to chapter 28. So, if
It's
you
not
get
the
to
updated version.
Right.
You might need to
we
update
might need to
that.
update it. But if you get to the end of where we are, and there will be some cliffhangers, and you need to know more, for $20 you can. Or you can just help us out with like whatever you want.
Any
Anything,
donation helps,
everything is
please.
good. The reason why we have a Ko-Fi is because we do want to publish this book and bring awesome content and merch and art and all that costs money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Help me, I'm poor.
Anyway, that's the public service announcement. Now back to our regularly scheduled content.
Chapter 2. I'm never using that voice.
Yeah.
That is my chapter only.
Chapter
Yep.
That is chapter only. And that you can also get with the Ko-Fi and the Only Elves account.
The morning dawned, but not cheerfully. The skies were gray and a thick fog blanketed the harbor, thin tendrils reaching towards the dock like ghostly fingers. Most of the town was still asleep, but Mina had already gone for a morning run down the slowly waking markets, and then back to her ship. She never let drink or weather get in the way of her morning rituals, and this morning she was buzzing with anticipation for the adventure ahead. None of the other men had seemed that interested in going treasure hunting with her, but the captain had given her permission to take a well-deserved holiday. She pulled her long red hair into a ponytail, donned her favorite yellow tunic, and made her way to the Wicker Goat. She realized she must have looked like a sight as she strode through the streets. This was her first ghost hunt, or treasure hunt. Whatever it was, she had wanted to be prepared, and prepared meant weapons. A bow and a quiver were strapped to her back, both of her good axes hung at her side, and her sword and trident rested behind them. A bandolier with 2 daggers fit snugly over her chest, and she carried her shield on her arm. Maybe it was overkill. But if overkill kept her from being killed, she wasn't afraid to carry a small arsenal with her. The door of the tavern swung open in front of her, letting sunlight fill the mostly empty room as she entered. Atreus was in the same spot he'd been last night. Perched on the bar stool with an almost lazy aloofness. He barely moved when she entered, but he watched her. A sword was strapped to his side, but it really was the way he looked at her that whispered threats of danger. Just because he was still didn't mean he couldn't spring into action. There was something of a feral animal in the way his eyes moved. But Mina had seen enough violence and faced enough monsters to not feel afraid when she looked at him. Caution maybe, but not fear.
Good morning. Are we ready to go ghost hunting?
She flashed a teasing grin at him.
Do you sleep in that chair?
Something like that.
He replied, a muscle twitching in his cheek.
Is that a hint of smile? Well, I can see he definitely slept in that chair.
She motioned to the piper, who was exactly where she left him last night, now grunting as he strained to sit upright, peg leg thunking against the ground. Aye, well, sometimes it's best to rest where you land. He stretched out his back with a pop. Couldn't miss this haunted treasure quest.
I see you're minus a few friends.
Atreus jutted his chin to the door.
My crew get easily spooked by the supernatural, so I let them sleep in. And I see you've made a few friends.
Her attention now turned to the only other occupants of the tavern, a raven-haired female elf and the Aarakocra seated at nearby tables, both of them watching Mina and Atreus. The elf was the first to move. She stood from her seat with cat-like grace. Her long black hair was braided under her weathered tricorn hat, and her plain dress was covered by a leather seacoat. A knowing smile curled up her lips as she gave Mina a cursory glance.
Gotta see if there's any merit to this ghost story.
She tossed a small silver knife into the air and then sheathed it by her thigh before doffing her hat.
The name's Tara.
Welcome to the crew.
Mina smirked at her.
And if it's treasure you're after, then I'm coming with you.
The Aarakocra stepped out of the shadows and spread his massive wings. A sight to behold. Mina had only ever seen an Aarakocra once before. Fascinating bird people who stood tall as any man. This one was covered in glossy black feathers, dressed like a hunter in thick leathers with a bow and quiver slung over his back. Holy Hannah, I'm going deaf to ear. Is that there truly a massive bird standing before me? The Piper's eyes were wide as saucers, instantly springing to his foot and peg.
Your eyes don't deceive you, Ginge.
Mina gave the Piper a friendly nudge.
Don't worry, we redheads will stick together.
Ginge, the name's Magnus McQuarrie, but my friends call me Magnus. He burred out.
Okay, Ginge.
Mina winked. Magnus raised a bushy eyebrow at Mina, but she just smiled sweetly back. Despite his loud voice and horrendous playing, she had decided she liked it, if only because he made her laugh.
What is your name, that I may address you properly?
Atreus turned a respectful glance to the Aarakocra.
My name is Akir. I can offer assistance from the skies.
His wings flared slightly as he bowed his head. Atreus nodded at Akir. He looked a little skeptical as he surveyed the group. Mina could only imagine what he was thinking. She narrowed her eyes as he seemed to give more interest to Magnus and Akir, having already written her and Tara off as less capable women. Well, if she had to split another lip to prove her worth, so be it. Besides, Tara looked more than able to hold her own in a fight. Akir's longbow would surely come in handy, and Magnus, well, he only wore a kilt, and it seemed to be nursing, and he seemed to still be nursing a hangover. But if worse came to worse, they could depend on him to use his horrifying pipes to scare away any enemies.
Well, looks like we have a merry band, shall we?
Mina motioned towards the door, and the group filed out. Despite the lack of sun and the persistent fog, the day was hot, and the road that started on the outskirts of town and led through the woods and up a steep hill was unforgiving. The wind picked up the higher they climbed, and Akir took to the skies, rather than sweating with the rest of the party on the sparsely traveled path. Mina and Magnus chatted amiably about his lady love, Tara occasionally joining in while Atreus opted for silence. But mid-morning, the mansion was in sight. Atreus, who led the pack, turned to the group as Akir landed softly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just completely lost my place. All right, all. Let's scope out the ground, but maintain an air of discretion and stealth, just in case.
It must have been a beautiful place, back in its prime. 3 stories high and filled with tall windows overlooking the sea. But the glass on most of the windows were broken now, and others were completely boarded up. The once white paint that must have glistened like a beacon in the sunlight now was chipped and gray, peeling in long strips that almost looked like melted wax along the sides of the house. An overgrown garden of thorny, vining roses and unseasonably blooming tomato plants threatened to devour the rotting front porch. A rusty gate swung on its hinges in a stone wall that led to a wilderness of a back garden. With the woods on the far side of the house and an expansive bluff that lay in the front before the cliffside, the house looked more lonely than haunted. The party crept towards the front, picking their way through the strange combination of roses and tomatoes.
Let me check the perimeter to make sure we don't have any unexpected visitors.
Akir suggested. With a mighty beat of his wings, he took to the skies, but landed within minutes.
The winds are against me over this place. I cannot sustain a proper flight.
That's okay, Birdman. Happens to many who boast impressive wingspan.
Tara plucked a rose for her hair and sauntered away, earning a scowl from Akir, but a smothered giggle from Mina, and a twitch of a smile from Atreus. Mina picked a tomato and followed Atreus along the side of the house, hoping to catch a peek through the window before heading inside. Magnus was on his way toward the rusty gate that led to the back of the house when he stopped, dead in his tracks. "Did you see that?" His voice rang loudly through the silence. Half the group scolded Magnus. "But did you see?" Magnus looked over his shoulder at the gate, which swung innocently and revealed absolutely nothing. Mina raised an eyebrow at him and returned to her sleuthing. Maybe bringing a theatrical minstrel on a ghost hunt was a bad idea. Atreus, however, seemed to know what he was doing and had wound his way silently through the overgrown foliage to where the first-story windows gaped over the front yard. Mina easily followed him in and positioned herself under one of the windows as Atreus stood under another. He looked at her and held up a finger, signaling her to wait.
Is there something inside?
She hissed.
Best to figure that out as silently as possible.
He whispered back. She held her breath as he pointed again to the ledge. They would pull themselves up and look inside at the same time. He mouthed the countdown. 1, 2. What in tarnation is that? Magnus shouted again. The outburst gave Mina a start, adrenaline surging through her uncomfortably. She pulled the tomato out of her pocket and tossed it, gunning straight for Magnus's face. Whatever element of surprise they might have had was shattered, so she didn't mind yelling at him.
Will you keep it down?
With unexpected agility, Magnus brandished his sword and sliced the tomato in two. She would have been impressed had she not been so annoyed with him. I saw me a ghost. Don't you be throwing vegetables at me, lass. Sorry, I just scrolled halfway through the thing. Alright. Before Mina could reply to Magnus's retort, she saw the source of all his outbursts. A flash of motion in the underbrush caught her eye and her trident was in her hand instantly.
I'm trying to find where. There we are.
Akir shouted,
Weasels!
Akir shouted, stringing his bow and loosing an arrow in the blink of an eye. The arrow flew through the air, skimming past Tara's head. It pierced through the rose in her hair, skewering the giant weasel, a long, lithe creature the size of a hunting dog. Before it was able to leap off of the garden wall and pounce at Tara, Akir fired another arrow, but this one did not hit its mark. The rabid, giant weasel charged towards Akir, and it clamped down on his wing, drawing an ear-piercing screech from the Aarakocra. Atreus, sword in hand, rushed to assist Tara, who was now slashing rodents left and right with a spear. Mina sprang to action, twisting the trident into a better attack position, so she charged the snarling weasel. One swift motion, and she had stabbed the creature, the pronged weapon digging straight through its side, and hurled it over her shoulder. She, unfortunately, aimed it straight at Magnus, who was in the middle of stomping on a giant weasel's skull.
Ginge!
Mina shouted a warning, but it was unnecessary. Magnus did a great sweeping cut with his axe, splitting the rodent cleanly in two. Magnus's face was covered in gore and rage as the chaos halted. The weasels were exterminated. The group looked at one another, inspecting for injuries. Akir flexed his wing, and it seemingly was undamaged.
I guess lunch is on Ginge.
Mina awkwardly chuckled, earning her a growl from the half-dwarf.
Sorry.
She whispered as the crew regrouped.
Weasels weren't exactly what I was expecting when I heard of treasure.
Tara griped, wiping a fleck of blood off of her cheek. I don't know what you heard about treasure, Magnus growled as he shook weasel guts out of his hair. But it's mine,
I don't care whose it is,
Atreus said softly.
but shouting is only going to attract attention.
You're absolutely right, lad. Magnus clapped him on the back as if he hadn't been the one to start the hubbub to begin with. Atreus looked incredibly uncomfortable at the physical contact and skirted away instantly. He and Akir started towards the front porch. The rotted wood looked unstable and there was no telling what lay under the porch. The two started quietly debating the best way to avoid falling through the rot when Magnus's bellowing voice broke the quiet again. Show yourself, you ghastly, ghoulish, dafty, cowardly, imbecilic muncher! The kilted piper spewed out at no one in particular, swinging his axe wildly.
Again with the shouting.
Atreus wiped his hand over his unamused face, just as a cloud of stink bugs escaped the bush Magnus hit, fluttering over the piper's face as he swatted them away. Mina almost laughed.
Serves you right.
That temper of yours will be the death of you, my friend.
Akir advised Magnus. My dearest, Hilda loves me temper. I came to claim the treasure for her, and I will not be defeated. Magnus produced a crumpled picture of a truly hideous orcish maiden from a sweaty fold of his kilt. Mina tried very hard to look supportive, but it was probably the most ghastly woman she had ever seen. The sound of beating wings and the screams of crows startled Magnus from his mooning over the worn-out picture. He squinted up at the roof of the house. I bet my good leg the treasure's up there. Crows like shiny things. Mina felt a breeze across her face as Akir took flight. In a moment, he was on the roof.
Well, there is a hole up here,
He announced, but soon was circling above the roof again. Mina wondered if it was because his body wouldn't fit through the opening or because there was something he could see, but that they couldn't. Oi, that bird's going for me treasure! Magnus hobbled up to the side of the building with surprising speed. At the edge of the wall, he removed his peg leg with a click and slammed it into the chipped siding, using it as a pick to climb the house with. Axe between his teeth, he scaled the wall, one handhold at a time, landing on ledge below the roof line.
Oh.
A ledge
A ledge.
below the roof
Sorry.
line. Once on the ledge,
should
he
I call
clicked his
that?
peg leg back into place. Bless Hilda and this gift of an immovable leg. A screech filled the air and Akir was spiraling back down to the ground.
There are bats in there.
Ah! You're just trying to lead me away from the treasure. I fear no bloody bats, Magnus raged. Magnus is in his death.
Yeah.
Do you need me to take over some?
Mina looked between the reckless Magnus and the irritated Akir. You're going to get yourself... Oh, that's me.
That was me.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're gonna get yourself killed if you go alone. Hang on.
Mina took out her rope and grappling hook. With a quick swing, Mina released the hook, which found its mark, Magnus's peg leg. She hoped it was as immovable as he claimed it to be, and that, since it was firmly on the ledge, it would bear her weight. Magnus sputtered some garbled words of protestation, but didn't move while Mina scaled the building and hopped up onto the ledge beside him. Lass, I swear! Magnus's mustache bristled as he muttered. Mina gave him her signature half-smile. He shook his head in disapproval, which was a gesture Mina received from many in her life. The two hoisted themselves up onto the roof. From there, Mina could see the layout of the yard and gardens. There was a well behind the house she hadn't noticed before from the ground. But before she could take in any more details, the roof below her feet began to shake.
What the?
Mina whirled around to see Magnus slamming his peg leg down near the edge of the hole, expanding the gap.
For the love of Poseidon.
A scruffy, gleeful sound escaped the half-dwarf's lips. You ever see an immovable rod, lass?
No.
She admitted, watching carefully as Magnus fastened the peg leg as a support beam between the two sides of the hole and knotted a rope around it. It's magic, you see. Unless I tell it to move, it won't budge. Hilda gave it to me after a fight when she accidentally chopped off my leg.
Wait, what?
There were so many questions Mina had about that. But she didn't get a chance to ask any of them as Magnus began to lower himself into the attic through the hole. And true to its name, the immovable rod did not move as the burly man descended into the silent darkness. There was silence for a beat, but it was almost immediately broken by a guttural scream. Mina dropped to her belly to peer into the hole, only to see Magnus being attacked by vampire bats. One was clamped down on his real leg, another on his arm. Mina pulled out her bow and shot the bat, sucking greedily on Magnus's leg. As another bat flew around Magnus's head, her second shot went wide, and the beast latched onto the viper's throat. The half-dwarf was swinging wildly with his axe, but the bats were swarming. In his rage, Magnus slashed away the bats on his arms and released the hold of his peg leg, falling to the rotting ground. He squashed the bats feasting on his back, killing them, but knocking himself unconscious in the process.
The Piper's down. I'm going in. Can I get a little backup?
Mina called over the roof's edge to the rest of the party. She caught a glimpse of Akir taking flight with Terra in tow, the elf holding onto his clawed foot with one hand.
I better not die for you, Ginge.
Mina was said to herself before front flipping through the hole and landing cleanly in a crouched position near Magnus's unconscious body. She sliced through a bat, lunching on Magnus's thigh as Akir and Terra burst to the ceiling, helping to exterminate the remaining bats. There was movement on the ceiling, and Mina looked up, half expecting to see a grotesque monster bat waking up and ready to join the fray. She did not expect the reality.
What the?
Mina's eyes now adjusted to the dark, caught sight of a figure crawling across the ceiling.
Dark and broody?
The others were too occupied with the bats to see Atreus looking like a living nightmare, defying gravity as he crawled through the hole and down the wall like a human spider. In a moment, he was over Magnus's body, hands glowing, performing a healing spell. Again, Mina had many questions, but pocketed them for the moment.
Next time you decide to throw caution to the wind,
She heard him quietly threaten the still prone dwarf.
do it when you won't run the risk of hurting others.
Magnus sputtered back to life, spewing a slew of curses. Get your dirty hands off of me, pretty boy. Atreus rose to his feet.
Let's not do stupid things like jump into bat-infested rooms again, alright?
He offered Magnus a hand up, which he promptly swatted away. Atreus didn't seem to mind, just shrugged and stepped away.
Most people use the front door?
Tara remarked as she wiped off a bloody blade on Magnus's shoulder. It's called the element of surprise, dearie. Magnus ran a hand across his bloody face, making it no better. Akir tossed 2 sacks towards the center of the room.
Found these.
Magnus scrambled towards the bag, greed sparkling in his eyes. My treasure! But it was nothing but an old broken doll and some tiny clothes.
Aw, Jen, Shapiro got you some toys to help you feel better.
Mina laughed, earning a vulgar gesture from Magnus and a laugh from Tara.
I'm going to take a look down here.
Atreus called up from the floor below, visible through the hole in the rotting floor where the stairs used to be.
When did you get down here?
Tara asked as the rest of the group peered down at him through the gap. Atreus and Mina made eye contact for a moment. It was clear that he knew she had seen his bizarre climbing skills, but also, in the moment their eyes connected, he seemed to know she wouldn't say anything.
Would you like assistance, Mina?
He gestured for her to descend through the hole. An electric charge rippled through Mina, hearing the sounds of her name on his lips for the first time. She never really enjoyed it much from the lips of others, but coming from him, it was like poetry.
And a man who can climb up a wall could be handy. Sure, but no funny business.
Mina teased while propping a foot on his shoulder. She could feel his cool hands on her waist, strong and calculated. Definitely no funny business. But it made her breath catch nonetheless. He lowered her to the ground and their gazes lingered, her senses on high alert with the closeness. He was a pretty mystery, and she was intrigued. Atreus broke the stair first, removing his hands from her hips and looking back up towards the attic.
Tara, your turn.
Mina wanted Mina wandered a few feet away to survey the space,
What's up, babe?
skin still tingling from the contact as she returned her mind to the mission.
End of chapter 2!
We made it.
Welcome to the 11 people that are here. Thank you so much for joining us for this
11.
chaos. We are currently reading the chapters of our D&D campaign, and you should go to our Ko-Fi, because if you do a $20 donation, you get to read up to chapter 28. All right. Sorry.
Also, during this stream, we got our first Ko-Fi member.
Yeah, we did.
And we will always applaud you when you join and you support us. We will just give you so much support for supporting us because we appreciate it so much.
Yes. And donations are going towards helping this book get published.
and like art and all that stuff. So there's a lot.
Yes.
I guess we can keep reading.
I say,
Because
and
you're
for
still
those of you
here.
at home who are wondering, yeah, this is a cold read for me. I have not read this.
Yes.
Hey, we have a first time chatter.
Ooh, hello.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to our chaos. This is just how we are.
And if anyone is curious, this is actually exactly how the campaign went down.
Yeah.
We just novelized it and like switched a couple of things here and there. But for the most part, it's pretty close.
It is 90% the original dialogue and all the actions are the original actions.
Because Janine took serious notes. And
Just-
now we just record it.
Yeah.
So yes, for
Bless.
anyone who's a DM out there, they went to a haunted house and instead of going through the window, the front door, the back door, they climbed up onto the roof and broke down through the window, through the roof in the attic for real.
To
I
be
would
fair,
I had
to
to
be
DM
fair, one of our players decided to do this and gave us no choice.
Here's chaos. What?
Okay.
To be fair, this was not my Scooby-Doo plan, and most of the time I am blamed for the chaos plans. This one time, it wasn't my fault.
This one time.
This one time.
And if you do the $20 donation, you'll find out what happens to who may have ever made that plan.
Yeah, that plan was not a good one.
It was not a good plan.
Bad plan.
Also, please do excuse the majority of the chaos is running in and out. We have a bunch of children betwixt us that are currently, hopefully, just watching a movie, but they might be breaking things. So the closest to the door ends up being Peter right now,
I might switch places eventually because I feel really bad.
He's used to this.
It's alright. Uncle Akir, Uncle Peter, it's kind of the same.
Uncle Akir, yeah.
Uncle here, always coming into the rescue. So we're just gonna give him a little bit longer to maybe come back from.
I think
I
we've
mean,
got a while
the
since-
next one is the next conversation, heavy conversation is Mina and Tara. So
Okay, well, that's cool.
Chapter 3. The second floor of the building was dark and dust-covered. Mina's elven heritage helped her see in the dark, but it didn't change the eerie feeling that lurked in each shadow. She could see 2 rooms from where she stood and what looked to be a grand staircase leading downstairs up ahead. As Atreus helped heal Akir and Magnus of their backbites, Mina struck up a conversation with Tara.
So, do you have to deal with any boneheads in your crew?
She said, gesturing to Magnus, who was swatting an increasingly annoyed Atreus from him.
Every day. But being a captain, you learn to anticipate some of their bad ideas to prevent the most damage.
Captain, very nice.
It wasn't unheard of for a woman to rise to the station of captain, but Mina had noticed that Tara wore no military insignia and didn't have the same haughty air as most merchant sailors she had met. She had to be some kind of smuggler, or perhaps even a pirate. A part of her wondered if she should feel uncomfortable working with a potential criminal, being a member of the Navy and all. But she liked the cool, confident demeanor of the elf woman, and couldn't be bothered with feelings of guilt at the moment.
A whole ship to command must be nice.
Tara waved a hand.
She's a galley, not that much to look at, but she's mine and I love her. My men can be a pack of wet snivelly ninnies when they want to be. Superstitious as all hell, and none of them were interested in coming to this place.
Mina grinned.
Boneheads.
As I said,
Tara deftly swiped a cobweb away from the door frame.
anticipate who's going to be trouble, work around that.
Well, I'm getting a pretty good idea of who we're going to need to anticipate.
Mina glanced back over at the half-dwarf, but connected eyes with Atreus instead. He looked away again.
I'm gonna do that every time.
I like to imagine it's way more like sultry glances, but we're just like
It's for
it's like
plenty
yeah,
of
I
fitting
know.
for the camera. You know?
Exactly. Yeah,
Theater.
this is my sexy face.
This is what we deal with live during the campaign.
Just us flirting with each other.
Really badly. I'm a terrible flirt.
Anyway,
I know, it worked for him.
Can't be that bad either.
You're not picky.
He looked away again before she could even be certain he had been looking at her. Her breath hitched in her throat, her heart fluttered, and the involuntary response to him was alarming.
Jeez, get a hold of yourself, woman.
Feeling the need to occupy herself, she turned to Tara.
Hey, would you like to scout the place with me? Buddy system and all that.
is that an invitation or a summons?
Tara smirked, but followed without further question. The first room they entered might have been a bedroom at some point, but the empty fireplace and a crumbling, unusable wardrobe clearly hadn't seen an occupant for years. It looked more like a storage room now. A pile of relatively clean, though out-of-fashion clothes lay on the floor.
Well, if we have ourselves a ghost, it's haunting in the nude.
Mina picked up a shirt between her thumb and finger curiously.
A nudist ghost, you say?
Tara laughed.
Oh, I'm sorry. My fault. I've never encountered one of those.
Atreus mumbled as he entered the room and began rummaging through the wardrobe, producing nothing but rotten rags and dissolving documents.
Looking for something specific?
Mina asked him. He didn't answer for a moment, brushing the fragments of decaying paper from his hands.
Evidence of curses, undead, supernatural forces, the things you normally see in a haunting.
Tara rolled her eyes heavily, and Mina got the impression she didn't hold much to the ghost stories or curses. Anything? Magnus called from the hall.
Nope. But there's most likely a naked ghost about.
Mina shouted back, chuckling with Tara.
Why must you encourage him?
Atreus rolled his eyes. Nude! Ha ha! That's more like it. Magnus's voice carried down the hall. The next room wasn't much different. More broken furniture all piled up against the walls and broken glass on the floor under the breezy window. Oddly enough, there was a mattress in the middle of the room, but it looked like someone had taken a knife to it and slashed it to ribbons.
There's no magic in here.
Atreus frowned, bending down to examine the mattress. He seemed to be looking for something specific, but what it was still a mystery.
I thought there would be more excitement in this haunted house.
Mina huffed. Tara gave Mina a side glance.
What? The weasels and bats were not enough excitement for you?
She stooped down to rummage through some clothing in a rotted chest, produced a pair of pants that looked fit for a fisherman or farmer. Finding nothing in the pocket, she tossed the pants at Mina.
Hey, Mina, I found your crewmen some pants.
You'd be surprised how often that happens.
Mina shoved the pants in her pack.
I'll keep these in case Magnus's kilt fails.
Despite the jokes, Mina didn't like the feeling of this room. The mattress kept pulling her attention as it seemed to pull Atreus's. She crept closer to him as he stared at the discolored fabric.
Do you think...
The words felt thick on her tongue. She didn't want to voice them out loud. It was hard to tell in the dim light whether the blotches on the mattress were mildew and mold or whether it was blood. And if it was blood, it would mean that somebody had been killed in this room. Mina wasn't a stranger to death, but she couldn't get the image of an innocent being held down on the mattress and butchered to death out of her head. She felt a little sick. He seemed to understand what she was asking, however.
Probably. But whatever happened didn't create anything undead, so that's a good thing.
He stood up and looked at Mina. A faint look of sympathy flickered across his face as he realized his words were probably not any comfort to her.
And by the look of it, whatever did actually happen, it was a long time ago. There's no fresh blood.
She almost asked how he knew that, but he was already on the move, heading back into the hallway.
Do you do this often?
She managed as she followed him out.
It's my job.
Your job is ghost hunting.
Destroying the undead.
She rolled her eyes at his less than descriptive answers, but she was just trying to be friendly.
Do all houses like this end up with some sort of undead curse?
He finally glanced at her.
You ask a lot of questions.
Maybe, but that's because you don't give me very good answers.
She squared her shoulders. Atreus didn't say anything to that, just took the lead down the hallway. A railing snaked around the hall, leading to the banister of the great staircase. At this level, what was once a gorgeous chandelier was eye level, all covered in dust and cobwebs and even an abandoned nest. Mina was distracted.
The
whole time?
The nest. It's Kira's cousin.
Akira?
There it is.
Yes, Akira is sitting in the nest.
Distract her.
You just gave me an empty seat. You should not have done that.
You're welcome.
Mina was distracted, wondering what it might have looked like, all lit up with candles for a party or a feast, when a sudden groan and a crack of wood pierced the stuffy silence of the mansion. One moment, Atreus was standing in front of her in the hall, and the next, he had vanished. A scream ripped from her throat.
Atreus!
A gaping hole
Not
yawned up from the floor,
We weren't laughing at the time.
where his feet had been moments before. She took a step closer to the edge, heart in her throat, half expecting to see his crumpled body at the bottom. "It is a bloody ghost!" Magnus shouted. Akir was instantly at Mina's side, peering over the edge.
You alright, man?
A groan came from below.
I'm alright. This is bruised.
Mina breathed a sigh of relief.
Another news. There are some footprints down here. Looks human.
Mina hopped over the hole Atreus left in the landing and descended swiftly down the stairs. Tara was fast on her heels and sliding down the railing gracefully. Akir vaulted the railing and descended to the foyer in a majestic flutter of wings. Magnus prepared to follow the Aarakocra's route, backing up and poised to jump.
Oh, sorry. Don't you dare!
Mina shouted up at him.
Magnus, you back up from that railing.
Tara scolded, and with a grunt, Magnus proceeded to jump over the hole in the landing and clunked down the stairs, mumbling the whole time about how nobody in this party had any sense of fun.
Oh, look, Tara. The front door you wanted us to use.
Akir commented once everyone had arrived in the foyer.
Yes, yes, right.
Front doors are too predictable. Stop your whining about it already, Magnus retorted.
Either way you look at it, through the roof or through the front door, this place looks empty.
Mina commented, surveying the room.
That's what the undead usually want you to think.
Atreus' voice came from over her shoulder.
Ooh, spooky.
Tara teased, wiggling her fingers as much to Atreus' obvious annoyance.
Come on,
He said.
let's stick together.
You're the one that took the little shortcut through the floor, Magnus reminded. Atreus said nothing to that, and even Mina felt a little less like laughing. There were indeed footprints on the floor. They wove about in unpredictable patterns, but it was obvious that somebody had been in here recently. Somebody barefoot and spry. She didn't know what that meant, but by the caution on Atreus' face, she figured it was best to stay serious for the moment. The door was closed to the first room of the foyer, marked with a large number 8 in graffiti. Atreus tried the handle. Unlocked. Inside, the room was small, but looked comfortable. It could have been a little drawing room back in the day, fit with a fireplace and 2 large plush chairs, though the chairs were now being depleted of their stuffing by some kind of rodent. Akir, Atreus, and Terra entered the room first, but it was so small that Mina and Magnus waited outside, peeking through the doorway. Atreus wrinkled his nose.
Be careful. There's magic in this room.
How can you tell?
It smells like it.
You can smell magic?
She gave an irreverent snort. Akir, however, nodded to Atreus. Whether this meant he smelt it too, or simply believed the man, Mina couldn't tell, but she watched with bated breath as he approached the fireplace.
There's something in here.
He said softly. He snapped his taloned fingers, and a small magical flame appeared in his palm. As he leaned forward for a closer look, some small spiders scattered away from the light, their black spindly legs clicking against the stone surface. Atreus flinched at the sight.
Scared of creepy crawlies?
Akir snickered, but before Atreus could retort, more spiders began to descend from the fireplace, but this time as large as fists. The floor in front of the fireplace turned black with arachnid bodies and legs.
What in the...
Mina gasped.
You've got to be kidding me.
Terra shouted as the spiders crawled with ferocious speed towards Akir and Atreus. Akir tossed the ball of flame at the spiders, but they scattered from the light easily, and the fire ignited some of the leftover rubbish in the fireplace instead. Mina pushed past Magnus into the room and hopped onto a chair, straightening her bow and releasing an arrow in one graceful movement. The arrow took out one spider in the sea of 50, making very little impact.
Well, that's wildly disappointing.
The spiders began to climb up Akir's wings. Terra pulled out a decanter of an unidentifiable liquid and sprayed it all over the Aarakocra and the surrounding area. A few spiders dropped to the ground, but only to be replaced by more. The sound of shouting caught Mina's attention. Atreus was covered in spiders that began to biting his legs completely through his clothes. There was a pale, greenish look to his face, and Mina realized that the spiders were likely venomous. She watched him try to bat away some of the fist-sized spiders, but they maintained their vice grip on his legs. Hang in there, laddie! I've got you! Magnus clunked into the room, using his peg leg to smash spiders as he went. A clap of thunder filled the small room, and all Mina could hear was the ringing in her ears. She rolled around to see the source of the sound. Akir's wings were outstretched in a stormy magic seemed to reverberate around him. The spiders on his wings dropped dead to the ground. Terra's voice started as a muffle, but became clearer with each word.
You could have started with that!
Atreus cried out in pain again.
Oh, screw this.
Mina was done standing on the sidelines. She unsheathed her 2 axes and leapt off the chair to the middle of the room. She swung her axes down either side of Atreus' leg, artfully giving him a shave to free him of spiders. Arachnid guts on her blades and face, Mina flipped her long red hair over her shoulder to see a stunned look on Atreus' face.
Thank you.
He managed. She gave him a small shrug in response. More spiders crawled towards Atreus, only to be slashed by Terra, skillfully wielding daggers in a murderous dance.
Sorry. Dance. Where are we dancing? Oh, there it is. You don't send men to do a woman's job.
Mina couldn't help thinking. A thunk demanded the group's attention. Akir's knees hit the floor hard. Spiders covered his legs and swarming his wings. The Aarakocra's eyes shut as he toppled over, thoroughly coated in spiders. Birdman! Magnus shouted.
No!
Terra's voice sounded hoarse.
He can't be dead.
Mina turned pleading eyes to Atreus. He'd healed Magnus before. He had to have some kind of magic that could fix Akir.
Help him.
Her voice was a whisper. Resolve entered Atreus' eyes. He extended a hand as a pale light poured from his fingertips and rested on Akira's body.
Your time isn't finished.
He whispered.
Justice is not served.
And Mina watched the breath return to Akira. Whatever magic Atreus had done had spared him from death. Magnus's scream of rage broke the fog of shock hanging over the group. He swung his sword violently, failing to make a significant impact on the spider's form, but almost slicing her in the gut. Mina jumped out of his way.
For the love of Poseidon, look where you're slashing!
She shouted, using her axes to exterminate the rest of the spiders on Atreus' body. The unnatural creatures seemed attracted to him. Terra was slashing and stabbing.
They just don't want to die. It's like they're resisting my blade.
Mina saw a distant look on Atreus' face, a look she had seen on her crew's faces time and time again. It was a look of a man overwhelmed and on the brink of defeat.
Atreus,
His eyes snapped at her.
I believe in you.
The distant look was replaced with shock, followed quickly by resolve. He pulled out his sword and began slashing spiders left and right. Magnus, in a barbaric rage, jumped onto Akira's body, squishing spiders between them. He picked up the Aarakocra as if he were as light as a feather and shook his body in an effort to free him of the remaining spiders. Slamming Akira's body against the wall, the piper shouted, "Die, you creeping vermin!"
I don't think you're helping, Dinge.
Mina threw her axe, which grazed Akira's body and pinned 2 spiders to the wall. She threw the other axe, which missed. Terra was ready, tossing her dagger to take out the remaining 2 spiders on Akira. In his rescue attempt, Magnus was now harboring biting spiders on his own arms and neck, but he hardly seemed to notice them. He continued to shake Akira violently as Atreus hurled healing spells his way.
Put me down this instant!
Akira screeched as he gained consciousness. All right, stop your fussing. Magnus dropped Akira and snatched the spider off of his shoulder, crushing it in his bare hands. Terra helped Akira to his feet.
You'll be all right.
I feel like I was tossed around by an ogre.
Akira rubbed his head, most likely nursing a headache. Magnus's shaking had given him.
Well, that was eventful.
Mina huffed while retrieving her axes from the wall.
I think you should take the lead from now on.
Atreus said, rubbing his neck. Mina and Atreus locked eyes for a prolonged moment, and that ripple of electricity pulsed through her again.
Hey guys, this brick is loose.
Terra's voice broke the trance. I'll get it! Magnus ran over to the fireplace, unhooked his peg, and slammed it into the brick.
Good gods.
Mina couldn't help feel a little disgusted by the piper's lack of subtlety. The brick fell away, revealing a small satchel. Hey, look at this! The satchel was marked with a powder keg, indicating that the contents inside were clearly explosive. Catch! Magnus pretended to throw the bag, causing the whole group to flinch, which of course made the half-dwarf laugh his head off. Mina closed the distance between her and the piper.
I'll take that.
She pocketed the satchel of alchemist's fire.
You're a child, I swear. Be useful and bar the door with your peg leg, will ya? Let's take 5, folks. I'm not ready to see what else this house has in store for us quite yet.
Indeed. Nor am I.
Akira grumbled from where he sat, slumped on the floor.
And that's all we got for you today.
We want to read the first literary conversation.
There's a lot more. I mean, currently I'm on. Well, we're moving the chapters around a little bit, so we'll start with chapter 28. But there's a lot of story left. We can definitely try to do this again if you guys enjoyed it. But if you do just want to keep reading on, go to this Ko-Fi link right here. And in the shop, there's a $20 gift, not subscription, just one time. And we'll send you the PDF of what we got.
And if you're not interested in doing the $20 gift, but you would still like to kind of read some shenanigans these characters get into, if you subscribe for the $3 a month, you can get access to our Discord, where we do lots of role play between sessions, which we always update people about. At the beginning of each session, we do a recap of everything that happened in the previous session and what happened between the week. But it's still really fun to read it because it's really fun to write it. So, you know.
We have a lot of good conversations between all the characters there.
Yeah.
And you're not going to quite get that if you just join week by week. Like, you'll watch it happen kind of live.
Yeah, so it's kind of like getting notifications of story in your pocket. Like, you know, your imaginary friends are texting you, which is nice
It
in
is
this
nice.
world where you can just look
I
at the
always get a
news
little
and
bit
it
happy
sucks.
when I see Ghost is over. So I'm like,
Like,
oh,
I know.
Plus, sometimes there's side quests that happen that, depending on who's involved in the side quest, may never end up on a stream and may never end up in the book because Mina didn't see it happen.
This is true. Yeah.
All very valid. And there's a whole lot of private jokes. So if you've never been on an inside joke, this would be your place to get inside a joke.
Yes. Well, join the joke.
join the joke.
We're a joke, guys.
We're
Join us, we're a joke.
Welcome to Rolls of Redemption, where we're a joke.
Is that our new slogan?
Is that our new slogan?
Yeah.
Help us pick a slogan.
Yeah.
Join the Discord.
And if you join the
slogan
Discord,
recommendation
you will be allowed to join the slogan recommendation channel.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any questions? Did you guys like that?
I know.
Anybody out there?
We've got 6 viewers. Any feedback?
Yeah.
Did we enjoy it? Did we hate it? Did we?
If you hated it, I'm sorry.
Tell us how you really feel.
Would you like my wife to do a lot more of the character voices and NPC voices? Because I'm okay with it.
Because I have a background in voiceover work. But
And I just sound like Batman or Sick Batman.
I love Sick Batman. That's probably my favorite voice that you have.
Yeah, but it's also
Like-
17 different NPCs.
I know, it's great. I love it every time.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's what we got.
That's what we get. When we said
Join Rolls of Redemption. Marikir can't fly that well.
Hey, there was only one time.
Twice.
Technically twice.
Really
But
early
we haven't
on.
gotten there yet. So, spoilers.
That happens to some birds under pressure.
It's only happened twice, and it only happened around the haunted house.
Oh,
Because it was
I
super
see.
hot.
It was the ghost.
Yeah, it was
ghosts
the alchemist.
Gotcha.
The alchemist
Yeah, the
presence.
ghosts gotcha. Okay. I've heard that excuse before.
It was the ghost. It wasn't me.
Oy vey.
You were all very happy that I could fly in our most recent encounter. So,
I mean,
Very
yeah,
true. I mean, the last several ones.
Yeah. Very fun.
All of my favorite encounters involve Akir's flying working very successfully.
death from above.
Yeah.
I hear children.
Oh.
here we go again.
We won't be able to sustain the stream for much longer. We're pretty impressed that we did what we did.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. For having a bunch of kids in the house, this went
And it's
about
their
as
bedtime.
well as it could.
That is
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all their bedtimes, actually.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And we can't end the stream until Peter gets
And
back.
Peter
so-
has to end the stream, so now I will riff. If you join our Ko-Fi, things will be better for you. Please do it. I have already said that when we get to 5 subscribers, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for us it's a lot, man. If we get to 5, I will dance.
It doesn't even have to be subscribers if we get gifts. I think.
Oh yeah, 5 anything. I will dance. I do not dance. Somebody gets to request the whatever song, but I will dance in all of my big round baby mama glory, and it'll be terrible, and I will put it on TikTok or Instagram. Sweet, probably both. So yeah, so let that entice you to see something ridiculous. Please,
Pretty please.
Like
I don't know what else to say, guys.
I know. Reminders that our normal stream is at Monday nights at 8 o'clock. So, that's just a couple days to
Because of how much are gifts?
Join.
No, the gifts, like, you can donate whatever you want. That's what I mean.
yeah.
But, I mean, if people subscribe, our favorite captain over here knows how to make really fun chainmail. She might send you something. Yeah, hashtag get Amelia to dance.
Yes. Amelia does not dance well at all, and it's just hilarious every time it tries to happen. So, yeah. This will be. Join us on Monday nights at 8 o'clock.
Yes. William Mullet. Guess I'll have to get on that Ko-Fi for that sweet, sweet Discord.
Please do.
If you do, we might give you specific special access to B-Dex in the Discord. Well, we probably would definitely.
You mountain of a man.
Bribery? We need you to end
We
the
just need you
stream.
to end the stream.
Do it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you guys had as much fun as we did. And see you Monday night.
Bye, everyone. I'll give you some music to listen to by Arcane Anthem to close out the stream.
Bye.